the chief executive, Carrie Lam, has to come out publicly to apologize and also to say that the bill would be withdrawn, so that's the end of it. So, and if she refuses to do that, I think people will not be happy.
So they've got the wind in their sails, but talk us through how they got to this point.
Well, the person at the centre of all of this is Carrie Lam, the chief executive, and she's really fighting for her political career now. Interestingly, we should remember she was elected, but from a shortlist drawn up by Beijing. Now, she's known as a fighter, she's known as somebody who never backs down, and yet we have this extraordinary U-turn over the weekend. So how did we get there? Well, it all began with this bill that she proposed with very little consultation, and immediately it sparks huge opposition. Organisers said 1 million people came out onto the streets last Sunday, demanding that the bill be scrapped. But Carrie Lam rejects their demands out of hand, and the bill is scheduled for a second reading on Wednesday. Now, that's when protesters surround the Legislative Council building. They're armed mostly just with umbrellas and metal barricades, and this leads to the heavy-handed police response that we saw. Lots of tear gas, rubber bullets fired as well. We were there. It was a very different atmosphere from the peaceful occupation of these same streets that we saw during the 2014 umbrella protests.
The last time this happened, they were here for nearly 3 months. The police are clearly determined not to allow that to happen again.
Well, that was Wednesday, but Carrie Lam then, far from placating the demonstrators, she doubles down. She calls it an organised riot, potentially criminalising tens of thousands of these people who took part. The following 2 days, Thursday and Friday, are a standoff, with Carrie Lam holding fast on the one hand and the protesters promising to come out in force again on Sunday. And then, on Saturday, comes the surprise U-turn. The bill would be suspended, she said, with no date set for further readings.
The government has decided to suspend the legislative amendment exercise.
But if she thought that would placate the protesters, she was wrong. They came out again, as we saw, in even greater numbers than before. And now they say they won't be satisfied until she resigns.
So Carrie Lam, did she jump or was she pushed by Beijing?
Well, that really is the million Hong Kong dollar question. Is this local politics, or to what extent is Beijing pulling the strings? There's a tantalising clue in a report from a pro-Beijing newspaper based in Hong Kong over the weekend that said that Carrie Lam may have had a secret emergency meeting with a senior official from Xi Jinping's cabinet. Here's what Emily Lau, the opposition politician, told me about that just before we came on air.
I think Beijing must have a hand in it because one of the senior members of the Standing Committee of the Politburo, Han Zheng, has come down to Shenzhen, just across the boundary from Hong Kong, sort of, marshalling things from there. Beijing probably said to her, "Enough is enough. What are you doing to Hong Kong?"
Well, Carrie Lam herself refused to confirm or deny whether she had this meeting. But the bottom line is Xi Jinping is facing two competing imperatives. Basically, he cannot allow people in mainland China to see Beijing backing down in the face of mass protests, especially since there are protests, anti-government protests that happen in mainland China. And Xi Jinping has very much made it his trademark of sort of cracking down on these things. But the other imperative really is trade. Xi Jinping's likely to meet Donald Trump at the G20 at the end of this month, and he's going to see these images beamed around the world as deeply unhelpful to his navigating his way through this trade war. So I think Beijing would have made a calculation over the weekend. What are the options? Intensify the crackdown or beat a tactical retreat? And it looks like they picked the latter.